All right. Well, welcome everybody to our webinar today. I hope you're having a great day and the weather's good and sun shining, but not too hot. I was just telling Tim, we're here in Central Illinois and it is 70 degrees and we haven't had 70 degrees and I don't know how long, so it's welcome. But anyway, we got a full program today.
This is a good one.
We got the smart guys on here today, guys, with Tim Brousseau of our good partner in DEFT Research. Really going to fill us in on a lot of happenings out there in the MA space and the senior space. So, and I know you got a lot of ground to cover, Tim. So we're just going to kick it to you and let you take off running, buddy.
Oh, no, really appreciate that. And I just want to give kudos to you two and Jason and Rebecca for setting this up and thinking of us over at DEFT Research. We try to do everything we can as partners along with you under the Integrity family to bring any valuable information and insights to you guys, and then obviously down to your downlines and your managers. And the whole point is high seas raise all ships, right? And the more times that we can share some information for you guys and for the industry, just helps the sales distribution channels be that much more effective. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the fact that we're going into Q4, which is the biggest time of year where we have this tremendous opportunity to scoop up a whole bunch of new clients. But also, guys, you'll hear me talk a little bit about, we're going to have to protect our existing book of business as well. So every single year we publish what we call the Gut Check Study. This is a preheat or a look at what we think might happen this upcoming AEP. My crystal ball has been shattered 2 million times. I can't tell you exactly what's going to happen. There's no silver bullet, but the whole point is we're trying to understand from consumers, what do we think they're going to do? What do they think they're going to do? And that's the lens that we're going to look at today. So a little bit about DEFT Research. For those of you that real quick haven't heard of us, we are a full service market research firm. We are part of the Integrity family. What makes us unique is that 100% of the work that we do is in the health insurance space. So we don't do research in tourism and travel and retail and technology. We do research in Medicare, Medicaid, commercial group, and ACA. 365 days a year, that's all we're doing. So that's what we're known for. We produce a lot of syndicated research to allow our clients and partners like this to keep their thumb on the pulse of what the heck is going on in the industry, how we think consumers might behave. And let's talk a little bit about that. Big question we always get first and foremost for people that aren't familiar with DEFT is, where do you get your information and how reliable is it? Well, we survey senior consumers that are 65 and above in Medicare, and we survey a lot of them. If you see in yellow there, over 2,200 responses. That allows us to get a really good, solid read on what consumers are thinking, what they're feeling, how they might act. If you look on the bottom, we have the sub-bullets. 1,200 responses in Medicare Advantage. We're going to talk about those consumers. Almost 900 in MedSup. I'm sure there's probably some MedSup loyalists out there. And we also want to keep our hand on what's going on with those consumers that are just floundering out there in original Medicare only. Let's start this presentation with a derived exercise of looking at some data to understand consumer satisfaction today and how that might portend to their activity this upcoming Q4. On slide 5, we ask consumers, you'll see on the left-hand side, who are in MA and who are in MedSup, a loyalty-based question. The next time you have the chance to make a move, which is coming up this AEP, on a scale of 0 to 10, how likely are you to stay with your current health insurance carrier? Now, consumers that say 0 to 6, red bars, those are the at-risk consumers that have one foot out the door. You answer 9 and 10 in blue, it means you're loyal. I have no real interest in going anywhere. Well, if you look at the 3-year trend that we see for Medicare Advantage and Medicare Supplement, on the far right-hand side, the at-risk percentage of consumers hasn't changed at all. But what has changed from the past 2 years to this year is look at the blue bars. Loyalty is down significantly for Medicare Advantage and Medicare Supplement for the last 2 years. We are now starting to come out of the heat of the global pandemic. And you think 2020, 2021, a lot of consumers were hunkering down, afraid to make changes to their health insurance policies. All this uncertainty that was going on with the global pandemic. Vaccines weren't readily available. Shelter-in-place options were out there. But now we see these consumers are looking at COVID and saying, it's not necessarily a total thing of the past, but now I need to start taking the bull by the horns. It's time that I start looking at other options that are out there. And another impact to consumer behavior right now is the fact that we are in the early days of a recession and inflation is running at 9.1%. And when you think about seniors on a fixed income, the dollar does not go as far as it used to. Another reason why consumers aren't showing high levels of loyalty to their plan, this bodes well for marketers. This bodes well for agents going into this upcoming annual election period. When we think about an increase in consumer activity from an acquisition point of view, but we also have to keep in mind, retention might be more important than ever for our existing book of business, this AEP, and we will talk about the sales approach to combat that in a few slides. Tenure matters when it comes to consumers when they have a plan or they're with a carrier. We have seen this in years of research at DEFT, that the longer a consumer is with their plan, the less likely it is that they're actually going to shop around and make a switch. But when consumers do make a plan or a product or a carrier switch, they realize the grass might be greener on the other side. There could be better options. That wasn't as scary as I thought it was. What we're looking at here is a map of the United States, all 3,300 counties, boroughs, and parishes nationwide, to better understand where have we seen changes in MA penetration from December last year to June of this year. That will take into account the AEP last year, the OEP this year, and any SEP or IEP changes that we've seen. Well, every time that we see a county, borough, or parish highlighted in red or pink means that we saw a high level of change in MA penetration, meaning those counties or service areas saw a lot of disruption in the last 7 months. And that just tells us when all of a sudden we see a lot of change in these certain geographies, that bodes well for upcoming changes. It means that consumers in those service areas are more likely to be shopping, more likely to consider and be open to making a switch. You look at where I live in the state of Arizona down there in the Southwest, almost half of the state is either pink or red. You look at the Midwest, you look at the Great Plains, you look at Illinois, Minnesota, the Dakotas, Michigan, Iowa, Kansas, Nebraska, you start to see more pink and more red, which just tells us if we're selling policies, if we have downlines that are working if in those service areas, we're going to want to make sure that we focus our efforts on consumers there. From a retention point of view, but those service areas might be more active than we've seen in the past this upcoming AEP. What can demographics tell us about consumer behavior? Well, here we're looking on the upper left, age cohorts, income levels. And you'll see we have 3 columns. Those consumers that are at risk, 0 through 6, I've got 1 foot out the door, I'm not loyal to my plan. Or on the far right-hand side, 9s and 10s, I am loyal. Look at the different age cohorts. 65 to 69, your youngest seniors. 70 to 75, you start to get to 76 and older. Well, consumers that are on the higher end of the age cohort, 76 and above, those consumers typically are the most loyal to their plan. These are consumers that are typically balancing a number of conditions. They are on a strict drug regimen. They have to make sure that their plan has all of their physicians in the network and the drugs on the formulary. These are consumers that are typically willing to accept small incremental price increases to make sure that they have the appropriate access. But when you look at those youngest consumers, 65 to 69, Those are the consumers that are most likely to be at risk, the ones that do have one foot out the door. When you think about your existing book of business, when you're targeting seniors this upcoming AEP, younger seniors, the newest to Medicare, the ones that are still trying to figure out, am I in the right plan? Am I in the best plan? Am I in the right product? Am I with the best carrier? Should I be getting more? Did I buy too much coverage? Did I buy not enough coverage? All of these things factor into the mind of a consumer who's still young in Medicare years. But that just tells us we want to make sure that we focus on targeting those consumers. And then what about income there in the middle? Typically, what we see in our research is that consumers that are on the lowest end of the socioeconomic spectrum are the ones that typically hunker down and stay put, less likely to make a move, more likely to stay with their existing plan. But now we start to see the impacts of inflation hurting the lower cost consumers. Typically, these consumers are less active, but you could make the argument that inflation is hurting the lowest socioeconomic senior the hardest today. Gas prices, $4, $5, $6 a gallon, even at Costco. Think about how much it costs when you go to the grocery store this year compared to just what, 6 months ago, 9 months ago. The reality is we can withstand the inflation right now. We can weather that storm. Do we like it? Absolutely not. But these consumers, when they're going to the Amico, when they're going to the Costco, when they're going to the Dominick or the Jewel Osco or whatever it might be, their dollar doesn't go as farther. They're going to be looking at more affordable options moving forward. And then we also ask these consumers on the left-hand side a stated exercise. What's the likelihood that you're actually going to shop around and look for plans this upcoming annual election period? And on the far left-hand side of that left chart, we see in the blue bars, 20% of Medicare beneficiaries said, I'm quite, very, or extremely likely to shop around. Now, the reality is, during the annual election period, we typically see 40 to 45% of consumers that are active, either shopping or making a switch. We surveyed these consumers halfway through the year, and half of them have already told us, I'm looking ahead to this Q4. I can't wait. I've had issues with utilization. I've had issues with coverage. I've had issues with access. You've probably heard this from some of your clients. That's why these consumers are already thinking about Q4. But to make up the delta between these consumers that are already looking ahead and the ones that we know are also going to be active, that's the power of the annual notice of change document. That's the power of the MedSup rate change notification. That's the power of marketing. That's the power of a new brand entering the market. That's the power of new supplemental benefits becoming available. That's the power of when you guys get in front of these beneficiaries who in the middle of the year thought that they weren't going to look around, but all of a sudden you make that introduction. You start showing them plan options. You start talking about the incremental that you can get with these other plans. Now all of a sudden the ball gets rolling. And on the right-hand side, we have to talk about inflation, running at 9.1%. Highest level of inflation our country's seen in 40 years. We ask consumers on the right-hand side, is inflation going to impact the likelihood that you're going to look around this upcoming AEP? Look in that blue box. Consumers were 3 times more likely to say that I'm going to shop around as opposed to just hunker down. You could look at inflation. You could look at the early days of a recession and you could say, hey, you could make the argument. Consumers are more likely to withstand the storm, to just simply stick with what they have. But what consumers are telling us is that they are on a fixed income. Their dollar's not going as far as it used to, and now they're willing to look around for other options. We need to be prepared to present new, lower cost, more affordable, get more out of your Medicare dollars than you've had in the past. That can get consumers to look around this upcoming AEP. As I mentioned, 1/5 of these consumers are already thinking about looking around. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that they've had issues. So we asked Medicare Advantage consumers in the middle of this year, tell us, what have you already had issues with? Why are you sort of experiencing this angst or any anxiety that you have with your existing plan. You're already thinking ahead. Well, if you look at those consumers in the red bars, the ones that are at risk of leaving, who said 0 to 6, the next time I have to make a move, I'm not likely to stay with my health insurance carrier. Look at the top 3 utilization issues cited by these consumers that are at risk of leaving. It's all around supplemental benefits. Allowances covered fewer services than I thought. I didn't realize that the allowance was $50 a quarter. I thought it was $75 a quarter. Or it's harder to use that allowance than I thought. I didn't realize that there was a network. I didn't realize I had to use that through mail. Think about supplemental benefits. It's a huge selling point. And I started to use this analogy recently. For Medicare Advantage plans, including supplemental benefits, these plans are almost like a Medicare Advantage ice cream sundae. And if you're like me, you like 3 scoops of ice cream in the sundae. So you've got your network scoop, your formulary scoop, and you've got your just core medical plan scoop. Supplemental benefits used to be the cherry on top of those 3 scoops of ice cream. But if you look down at 3 scoops of ice cream and a cherry, that's nothing more than a bowl of ice cream. When there's so many supplemental benefits out there today, and there's so many varying degrees of supplemental benefits today, supplemental benefits are not just the cherry on top, they're the whipped cream, they're the nuts, the hot fudge, the caramel, the marshmallow whipped fluff stuff. They are the crushed nuts. They are the sprinkles, the chocolate chips, the fresh fruit, all the things that make an ice cream sundae so appealing when we look at that is the same thing that consumers are looking at Medicare Advantage plans when they see supplemental benefits. But these consumers almost feel like now they're getting a bait and switch, which just tells us we have to spend more time talking about the nuts and bolts of the supplemental benefits, especially if there's allowances, especially if there's flex cards. Consumers don't just want to get wooed by that dollar amount. They need to know if there's parameters or guardrails, and we have to start talking about that in more detail, because if not, these consumers are realizing the limitations of those benefits and they're showing attrition risk. What about coverage issues? When inflation's running at 9.1%, all of a sudden you see cost rising to the top. Consumers are price sensitive. If you look top half of this chart here, drug deductible too high. My financial exposure because my max out of pocket is too high. I don't have a Part B give back. We will end the presentation talking about that. How much do I have to pay out of pocket every single month for my premium? It used to be $10. It feels like $25 because inflation's so hot. Copays for specialists, tests, and procedures are up there. And number one reason on the top for Med Sup consumers, if you are a Med Sup loyalist selling agent, premium sensitivity. Everything that they have to dish out of pocket, $150, $175, $210 every single month, the dollar does not go as far. These are the issues facing consumers today. It's all around price in the era that we're in. And let's be honest, inflation's not going to come down to a normal level by Q4. These are still going to be top of the mind issues for these consumers. Switch gears a little bit. Let's talk about marketing. I know that a lot of you are getting your name out there, you're getting your face out there, building your own brand, maybe doing some of your own marketing yourselves. And keep in mind, senior beneficiaries are getting inundated with marketing. They're always seeing things online, in their mailbox, out of home, on the radio. We ask consumers about their attitudes for Medicare specific advertisements. And then we ask them, on a 5-point scale, to what degree do you agree with these attitudinal statements about Medicare advertisements? Well, let's start on the bottom and look at the bottom 3, which are actually the most positive, but consumers aren't necessarily thrilled because they're not seeing or feeling this all this often. On the bottom, most Medicare advertisements provides information that is important to me, something that means something, that resonates with me, that I know will impact my daily life when it comes to health insurance. Only 9% of consumers completely or strongly agree with that statement. Second from the bottom, Medicare advertisement generally is relevant to people like me. Does it include people like me? Does it talk about the community that I live in? Does it even talk about the plan design or the carrier that I have available? Does it resonate with me? 16% of consumers, third from the bottom, feel like they were qualified for the benefits that were advertised. All too many times, there's benefits that are talked about that aren't even available in the service area. CMS is cracking down harder, but the last thing consumers want to hear about is something that they're not entitled to. A quarter of consumers right in the middle feel misled by Medicare advertisements. Think about all those celebrity hotlines that are out there. They're talking about benefits that might not even be available in the service area. Part B give back to the tune of $140. You can only find that in South Florida and Southern California. You're not going to find that in the great state of Illinois. Most Medicare advertisements skips over information that's important to me. We want to make sure we're talking about things that resonate with these consumers. Too many untrustworthy people. You are health insurance sales professionals. You are trustworthy. What's not trustworthy? All these third-party marketing organizations that are paying millions of dollars to these celebrities, that are private equity and venture capitalists back, that are buying all of these leads and selling them 8 to 10 times. That's why CMS is cracking down. But these consumers already realize that. And then on top, there's just too much Medicare advertisements. Think about how much marketing these consumers are inundated with. But that's why we have to strive to do everything we can to get in front of these consumers. Let's get them on the phone. Let's trade some emails with them. Or most importantly, let's get them to our office. Let's meet them at their home. Let's get them to an open house. Let's get them to a seminar. Let's get them somewhere where we can talk about the things that resonate with them so that they don't feel like there's too much Medicare advertising out there, but they're getting the right information from the sales distribution channels. We also looked at these consumers and we indexed them by how discouraged they are from the Medicare advertisement that's out there. And we look at those consumers on the bottom that are the most discouraged, the ones that feel like there's too much marketing, that there's untrustworthy actors out there, that they're being misled by marketing. 21% of those consumers on the bottom have one foot out the door. But those consumers on the top that are the least discouraged, the ones that feel like the benefits that they hear about are actually ones that they qualify for, that the information that's being presented to them is relevant. They will use it. They need it. And that when they sit down and they work with a health insurance sales professional, you know what? All the information is important. It's resonating with me. When we take that approach on the top, 7 out of 10 of those consumers are loyal to their health insurance plan. That's what we want to focus on. The benefits that they qualify for, the things that are relevant to the needs that they have based on the conditions and the care that they need, and what information is actually important. We also did a message testing exercise for this upcoming annual election period. I'm sure a lot of you are leveraging temperature communications that are available through maybe Integrity or through New Horizons. Maybe you're doing marketing all on your own. Well, we wanted to understand the type of messaging that's going to resonate with consumers. And we put 6 different options out there. On the bottom, we asked consumers, do you just want the facts? The information on what you have to pay and where you can go for healthcare. Just make it black and white, cut and dry. What about the fact that Medicare is complicated? Do you want to work with a health insurance sales professional to block out all the noise so that you can understand the benefit options that are truly available to you? Do you want messaging that focuses on not just your physical health, but maybe your mental and emotional health as well? What about the fact that you're about to enter the best 20, 30, 40 years of your life in retirement? You want to make sure that you're being as active as possible. Do you want to look at a plan that's going to help you face all of your health issues so that you're there for your loved ones? Or on the top, what about the fact that you might be missing out on some benefits? You have paid into Medicare your entire adult career, 30, 40 years. Now's the time to maximize the benefits. Is that some messaging that these consumers are going to resonate with? Well, we then asked these consumers, tell us, if a health insurance carrier or a marketing campaign was newly created, which of the following themes would you find the most appealing And which ones would you find the least appealing? Well, here we're looking at some percentages of consumers who found these messages the best or the most appealing. What do we see right in the middle there? We see anywhere from 16 to a fifth of consumers saying, you know what? I like that information of talking to a health insurance sales professional. I do want to sit down and work face to face. I do want to hammer out the different options that are available. Missing out on benefits you've earned. This is something we want to talk about when we sit down with our prospects. These consumers have paid into Medicare just like us our entire adult lives. They want to get everything they can out of that Medicare dollar. And when inflation's running at 9.1%, they want to stretch that Medicare dollar as far as possible. And on the top, consumers want just the facts. Don't give me fluff. And even those consumers that are the most discouraged, 44% of them in red, the ones that feel like that they've been misled, that there's too much information, that there's untrustworthy actors out there. They just say, let's keep it black and white. If you're going to talk to me about these supplemental benefits, don't glorify them. Tell me the nuts and bolts. Let me understand the parameters. Are there guardrails? Are there networks associated with them? If it's a $2,000 allowance, can I use all $2,000 on dental, or can I only use a fraction of that on dental? These are the things that we want to drive home to these consumers when we meet with them or market them to this upcoming annual election period. Now, of all the different marketing tactics that go out, we then ask these consumers in blue, what's your preferred call to action? What would you like to do in response to an advertisement that you see? On the top in blue, almost half of the consumers say, you know what? I want to go to a website. Why do consumers say that? Because they typically feel like they can remain anonymous early in the shopping process. Maybe I saw something online. Maybe I read a direct mail. Maybe I saw or I heard a TV spot, or I saw a TV spot or something out of home. I'm going to go poke around. I'm going to go see what the website has to say. I'm not ready to make that decision. I'm not ready to open up to being sold. Second from the top, call your local agent. 3 out of 10 said that. You start to get the seminar. Now we're down to 6. Virtual on the bottom, 3. But then we followed it up with the gray bars. And we said, what's the likelihood that you're actually going to follow through on that response? We actually see a decrease in the percentage of consumers that say, I'm leaning towards a website in terms of what I'll actually do. More consumers say, you know what? I'm actually going to go meet with that health insurance agent. I know that I need someone to help me cross the T's and dot the I's. And while the 6% of attend a live seminar looks low, 60% of those consumers said, you know what? I'm actually going to follow through on that. Attend a virtual seminar, 6 out of 10, I'm going to follow through on that. Keep in mind, for the last 24 months, we have seen interest and attendance and attending a seminar rock bottom. Why? The global pandemic, shelter in place, vaccines weren't readily available until last year. All those things kept these consumers from doing the things that they do in normal life for that short period of time. But now we're starting to see these consumers breaking out of their shell. We're starting to see them getting back to some semblance of normalcy. And we might see a higher rate of seminar attendance in this AEP than we've seen the last 2 years combined. Let's talk a little bit more about shopping. Let's get into some agent information here. On slide 18, we asked consumers, when you shop this upcoming AEP, how do you expect to do so? 6 out of 10 on top say, you know what? I've got to read my ANOC. I've got to read my MedSup rate change notification. You ought to know what carriers are going to be doing with their plans different for 2023. You sit through all these rollout meetings. I see them advertised on LinkedIn all the time. Photos about how everybody's having a great time at these rollout meetings. You need to be paying attention to understand what's different from last year to this year, especially if there's negative impacts. A leaner formulary, no preferred pharmacy network, so provider groups no longer in the network. I mean, all of these, a reduction in a supplemental benefit and an elimination of a supplemental benefit, these can all spur consumers to make a move. 37%, second from the top, said they do expect to go online. Do we have our own website? Are we marketing on Facebook? Do we have any online marketing go out? 33% said talk to a health insurance sales professional. Keep in mind, last year, last AEP, 21% of beneficiaries met with an agent like you. Now, halfway through this year, 33% say they expect to work with an agent. That is up significant. That's 12 points higher than last year. That bodes well for you all this upcoming annual election period. Are we staffed and prepared to support this pent-up demand that these consumers have for working with health insurance sales professionals like you? Last year, 4% of consumers this past AEP went to a live seminar. Now it's 3 times higher at 12%. Are we hosting open houses? Are we doing seminars? Are we doing community meetings? Are we going to community centers? Yeah, for the past 24 months, that was a tall order. Not well attended, probably didn't close much business, but now there's this pent-up demand of these seniors ready to get back to that sense of normalcy. And we see that this bodes well for increased activity this upcoming AEP. And we also asked those consumers in blue who told us they were the most likely to switch. These are the most active beneficiaries. Coming up for this upcoming AEP, what do you expect to do? Look at 45% of them, third from the top, talk to a health insurance agent. Almost half of all the beneficiaries that we surveyed that said that they were going to likely switch this upcoming AEP want the help of you. They don't trust themselves to do that by alone. They can't cross all the T's and dot all the I's. They know for a fact that if they make a move, that there's a good chance that they might miss something. Maybe one doctor's not in the network. Maybe one test is not covered. Maybe something's covered at a co-insurance instead of a copay. Maybe they will lose out on a supplemental benefits. This is why they rely on you so much. And look at on the bottom, a quarter of consumers who are likely to switch this upcoming annual election period are leaning towards attending a Medicare seminar or meeting. We minimized these meetings over the last couple years, but now we're seeing this resurgence. We're seeing this pent-up demand coming out of the hot days of the global pandemic. And we want to make sure we're doing everything we can to get our face and name out there this upcoming AEP. And we asked all of those consumers who told us that they were unlikely to attend a Medicare seminar this upcoming AEP. We said, okay, we get it. You're not likely to attend a Medicare seminar, but what if you were offered an incentive? And the incentive was either a $5 or $10 gas card or a $5 or $10 grocery card. The reason we asked about that is because earlier this year, we actually surveyed beneficiaries about the inflation. And we asked them their top concerns about the inflation. Their number one concern, how much they were paying at the gas pump. Their number two concern was how much they pay at the grocery store. So that's why we asked about a gas card or grocery store card. And if you look on the left-hand side, offering a $5 gas or grocery card will get a fifth of those consumers to now be a potential attendee. You offer a $10 gas or grocery card, now all of a sudden 3 out of 10 of those consumers that said that they were unlikely to attend, now all of a sudden are potential attendees. There are ways that we can entice and engage these consumers. Let's provide something that's actually going to provide a ton of value to them in their eyes, especially when inflation's running hot and these consumers are on a fixed income and they are getting hit hard at the gas pump and hard at the grocery store. The value that you guys bring to the industry is immense. And we see in the data all the time that there's an increase in reliance on beneficiaries wanting to work with you. And the reason being is that you guys do a stellar job of providing information and explaining benefits. Medicare is confusing. It's foreign compared to ACA coverage and commercial group coverage. You've got 3 product lines, essentially an MA, MedSup, and original Medicare only. You've got dozens of carrier offerings. You've got tens of dozens of plan options that are out there. It can be overwhelming for an individual to try to siphon through all that information. You guys don't just siphon through the information. You guys are providing explanations of benefits with immense accuracy. When we asked consumers who used an agent last year, we asked them, how accurate was your agent's explanation of the benefits? 9 out of 10 said quite, very, or extremely accurate. We have to keep up that momentum. But if there's one area that we maybe need to do a better job on, it's explaining more details about the allowances and the flexible benefit cards, because there are limitations on them. There are parameters. And as we saw earlier, the number one concern of Medicare Advantage consumers with the utilization of their benefits was all around the supplemental benefits. And it was all around the allowances, and it was all around the flex cards. So we need to make sure that we understand those details, and we need to make sure that we're articulating them. As we all know, these third-party marketing organizations have cast a dark shadow over the senior beneficiary experience. We all heard about last year during the AEP about how these consumers were calling up these celebrity hotlines, and they were unknowingly or unwittingly switched from one carrier to another. CMS cited a statistic around 118% increase in complaints to CMS this past AEP compared to the previous AEP. And why did CMS say that? It was because consumers were saying it was these third-party marketing organizations that were duping them into switching plans. Well, CMS came out and made changes in the guidelines. And you might have looked at those changes and said, my goodness, do we have to disclose a new thing? Are we now bound by something different? I thought we had a good tailwind. But the reality is, these changes in the eyes of the consumers are a good thing. On the left-hand side, what are we now required to do? We have to state, we don't represent Medicare. We're not representing every single carrier. We don't sell every single carrier. These are the plans that I am licensed to sell. We have to talk about that. We have to disclose that. We can only talk about the Medicare benefits that are available to you specifically in your service area. We can't talk about things that are shiny 2 counties over that aren't available to you. And on the bottom, we're only required to talk about benefits that our clients are eligible for. We can't talk about D-SNP plans if it's a high-income consumer. But we ask the consumers, should agents be required to disclose these 3 things? And we see that 80% of beneficiaries either completely agree in blue or strongly agree in orange that agents should be required to disclose these things. So while we look at this and say, gosh, do we have to create another form? Do we have to disclose something new? In the eyes of the beneficiary, this is only building more trust. They see this as sales distribution channels now being more transparent. And when we sit down with beneficiaries, we shouldn't tuck our tail between our legs and talk about and disclose that we're only able to sell these plans, or we can only talk about these specific benefits, because in the eyes of the beneficiary, it's a positive. We all know CMS now came out and said, hey, all of these sales calls, they've got to be recorded now. And you've got all these small agencies, GAs, independent agents. Like, how can I manage this? This is tough. Why are we lumped in with these third-party marketing organizations? But the reality is, again, in the eyes of the beneficiary, on the left-hand side, those consumers who used an agent this past AEP in green said that they would be more willing to work with an agent if the phone call was recorded. So even disclosing, hey, we're just going to record the phone call here so that we're all on the same page. It is a requirement from CMS, but hey, just want to make sure that everything we talked about is totally transparent out in the open. Did it seem like a total blindside when CMS came out with this earlier this year? Absolutely. But again, in the eyes of the beneficiary, all this is doing is building more trust between them and you, building more transparency between them and you. And we see that as this a tailwind for more consumers willing to work with you guys. We also did a choice-based exercise of boomers today. And we said, hey, there's all these agents out there, and these agents will do a whole bunch of different things, and they look unique and different. Tell us, what's the most important aspect of you working with an agent? What weighs heavily on your mind? Does it matter if they talk to you about financial planning? Does it matter that they sell you other policies? Well, if you look at the top two in orange, there is ageism that exists in the eyes of the beneficiaries. They do take into account the agent's age when they're sitting down and deciding who they're going to work with. But equally important, second from the top, is the sales approach. If I'm going to invest my time in sitting down with a sales distribution channel, how are they going to work with me? How are they going to communicate with me? And we put three different options in front of these consumers. We said on the right-hand side, this agent could just promote the most popular plans that are out there. In the middle, this agent will consult with you on plans that you bring to the meeting and ask you to review the coverage. Or on the far left-hand side, you know what? That agent is actually going to proactively review your existing coverage with you and then look at other options. Consumers were twice as likely on the left-hand side to say, you know what? I like when the agent actually looks at my existing coverage. We talk about that, and then we talk about the new coverage. Think about your existing book of business. Think about the fact that these consumers in Medicare Advantage are going to get an ANOC the last week of September. They will get a MedSup rate change notification. These consumers need help understanding that, proactively reaching out to them at the end of September, early October, willing to have those discussions about what's changing, what does this mean for you, and then look at other options. That's what beneficiaries want as part of a sales approach. Don't just come bring to me new popular plans. Help me understand what's different about my current plan versus what it's going to be next. And then also let's talk about some different options that are out there. That's 2 times more important in the eyes of these consumers. A couple slides here on Part B give back, and then we'll talk about open it up to any questions anybody might have. Inflation is running hot. We've talked about that. Earlier this year, we surveyed consumers and we said, hey, top of mind, do we feel like inflation is going to impact healthcare costs? They said yes. We asked boomers just 45 days ago in our age-in study, you are about to move on to a fixed income. Is inflation worrisome for you when you think about your retirement savings? 50% are extremely worried about it. And the reality is, it is going to be a hot topic on the election trail from now through November. We know no matter what's going to happen in terms of these elections, the midterms, inflation will be a hot topic. And we've got the senior population, which is the most reliable, strongest voting bloc out there. Inflation is top of mind for these consumers, and it's growing in terms of being top of mind. When we surveyed green bars, consumers in Medicare Advantage earlier this year in March and April, and we asked them about the level of agreement that inflation has impacted your healthcare costs, we see on the left-hand side, 41% of them said, I do not agree at all. But as inflation has continued to grow, and we're in the early stages of a defined recession on the far right-hand side, when we surveyed consumers dark bar in June this year, now 4 out of 10 strongly or completely agree. That's why we have to realize cost sensitivity of our existing clients, as well as beneficiaries that we're going after going into this upcoming AEP. And on slide 28, we asked consumers about this Part B give back, Part B buyback, if you will. We asked them about their awareness. 2 years ago, the awareness of Part B premium give back was 21%. On the top for Medicare Advantage now it's 40%. That's 19 points higher in 2 short years of consumers being aware of this Part B premium give back. And when we did an assessment of CMS enrollment and plan data files, all public information, we actually found that there was a 3.5 time increase in Medicare Advantage consumers out there today compared to 5 years ago that have a Part B premium give back plan. This is money that goes right back in the Social Security check. Means their dollar actually goes further when they have this. And in the last slide here, before we open up to some questions, if you are selling Medicare Advantage and you are contracted with a carrier and they have plans that offer a Part B premium give back, you better be talking about that. Because the Medicare Advantage consumers in blue on the top told us what's the likelihood that you're going to look for a plan this upcoming AEP with a Part B premium give back? 50% of them said very or extremely likely. We are in a 40-year high of inflation, 9.1%. We are talking about seniors on a fixed income right now where their dollar does not go as far as our dollar goes. These consumers are looking at other options out there. They're looking for lower cost plans. They're looking to better understand the supplemental benefits. They're looking at getting more money back in their Social Security check this upcoming AEP. And if you're working with the plan that's offering a Part B premium give back, we better be talking about it. Now, John, Steve, Jason, Rebecca, I know we covered a lot there, and I think we came in smack dab right on time at 45 minutes. Didn't know any questions you guys might have.
I just was thinking, I don't think you took a breath that whole time, Tim. That was amazing.
I snuck a quick sip of coffee in there in full disclosure.
Yeah, no, man, that is some fantastic information, buddy. Yeah, we got a few questions here. Let's just throw them out there.
Sure.
Yeah, I think the first one from Doug is from the slide on the risk of switching. And he says, do you see any differences in rural communities?
So we do. So typically what we see is that from a rural perspective, you have consumers that typically will skew more MedSup than Medicare Advantage. And when you look at the loyalty of these consumers in MedSup, their loyalty is down 7 full points year over year. So all of a sudden you have consumers that are in a rural area. And if they're also in Medicare Supplement, keep in mind that premium for MedSup starts to go up 8%, 10%, 12%. These consumers are looking for some other options. So we do see some uniqueness and nuances in terms of options that are out there. But yeah, that's kind of what we think about when we think rural versus urban.
Okay, and with regards to consumer preferences for the age of their agent, do they prefer older agents or younger ones?
We have it in the full study. They actually prefer this unique age that's like 50 to 65. So it's skewing a little bit younger than what they are themselves.
I'm right. Me and Spinner, we're right in the sweet spot.
You're right. You're right in the sweet spot.
Right there, man. Not for much longer, but we're in there.
You're in the right business for sure. Yeah, there's this, from health insurance agents' perspective, when they look at a 22 to 28-year-old, they don't necessarily see sort of that gravitas of someone who's legacy and has been selling this for a long period of time and relatable to the needs that they have. And again, that's pure ageism. We're not bashing at all the younger agents that are starting their careers, because you've got to start somewhere, right? And those young agents are hungry, but this is just in the eyes of the consumer. They're looking at sort of that 50 to 65 as sort of the sweet spot. Now, there's not huge differences between over 70 and under 30, but that sweet spot is sort of the 50 to 65.
Okay. I was listening to one of our partners, Ryan Kimball, talk about some of the barriers to utilizing some of these supplemental benefits. That was a huge headache for a lot of our beneficiaries. And I see more companies going to this universal card that have got utilities, copay money, flexible money,
Yep.
The counter card. You see a lot of carriers across the country falling into that line. Add to that.
Yeah, so keeping on that right there, I would say a lot of carriers are going that route. But the problem is they might load $2,000 onto that card, Steve, and then all of a sudden it's like they don't realize they can only use $250 on dental. Go ask WellCare what happens when you put a $2,000 card out there and you can only use $250 on dental. Well, when a consumer realizes after the fact that they enrolled that they can only use $250 on dental, then they're pissed at their agent, they're pissed at their carrier, and they can't wait to get out of that. So that's the whole, having it on there, having a card is good. It gives you choice. Use the benefit for what you want to use it for. We see consumers gravitating towards that sort of mindset, but then also we're seeing that now that these are becoming more prevalent and we're seeing more limits or parameters on them, all of a sudden consumers are feeling like this is a bait and switch. This is not as good as I thought it was, which is why, again, we have to be more understanding and aware of those limitations so that we can articulate them.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Okay, we have an anonymous person. Did I hear correctly? The Part B premium give back is only in South Florida and Southern California?
Oh, no. Sorry. What the point I was making there is that when Joe Namath started talking about the Part B premium give back, he started talking about how you could get a specific dollar amount. And it was like the max at the time was like 140, 150. Well, the reality is you can only get that amount if you live in South Florida or Southern California because of reimbursement rates there. So we actually look at CMS plan designs, and the average we see out there is somewhere between $10 to $20 a month. There's some plans out there that have 10 cents as a premium give back, and that's an actuarial rounding error. That's why they sort of tuck it in there. So the reality is it's not only available in Southern Florida or Southern California, it just varies by geography.
Okay, do you think there's any chance the new bill going through Congress will actually lower Part D prices?
Gosh, I hope so. I mean, I really hope so. But this is what's a 700-page bill that just got passed. There's a lot of discussions out there about what that means. There was a protection for seniors in Medicare on insulin, so the cap is still $35. That cap was removed under 65. So if you're selling ACA policies, keep in mind that $35 cap is no longer available as part of the new bill, or it wasn't extended, I should say. I don't know. Time will tell on that, Jason. I don't have a point of view, but I can tell you that prescription drug costs is the #1 dissatisfier of Medicare Advantage beneficiaries. We see it almost every single year in our AEP study. Now, it doesn't really contribute to switching because there's no real big difference between Tier 3 and Tier 4 brand co-payments when it comes to carriers. They're all $40 to $50 for Tier 3. They're all $80 to $100 for Tier 4. They're right there. Like, no carrier's doing a fire sale on Tier 3 and Tier 4 because they're going to get hammered. The whole point here is, can there be some negotiations to lessen the cost of those drugs between pharma and Medicare and carriers to make that more affordable for seniors? I think that's the crux of what the bill is. Is it going to happen? Or is pharma going to figure out another way to make up the costs? I don't know. We're talking big business. It's above my pay grade there.
Okay, we have another one, two more. Do you see any predictable issues with loyalty when it comes to the physician relationship beyond in-network availability?
Oh, so in terms of, can I be seen on time? So we have seen in research that consumers do want to see their physician as opposed to an NP or a PA, and it happens often. Like I've got a doctor, right? And every time I go see my physician, and make an appointment, I can never get in to see them. I always see an NP, a PA, or a nurse practitioner, or a physician assistant, and there's so many that circle the practice that they don't know my health and they don't know the last conversations that we've had. So we see a little bit about that, but at the end of the day, the #1 thing that consumers want is, can I get access to my doctor? Does my doctor know what's going on? Are they weighing in on my health? So yeah, outside of access to the doctor, we don't see any sort of make or break type experiences that are causing consumers to run for the hills.
Okay. One more. I was told that you can call people to set up an appointment to do free Medicare reviews. Are you able to cold call people to do this, or what would you suggest the most compliant way to do a Medicare review?
So I have never worn a compliance hat in my entire life. I used to run Medicare at a Blue plan, so I've gone like nose to nose with compliance a number of times. I think the rule is, and I mean, you'll have to have New Horizons circle back on this, but I think the rule is you can cold call, you just can't close on an outbound cold call. So you can call and set up the appointment. I don't think you can close a deal on an outbound cold call. Is that right?
Yeah, I would be quite careful. I think that I would probably shy away from making cold calls, offering free Medicare, especially if you're in the Medicare Advantage space or the PDP space. That's really becoming part of the issue out there right now, is that outreach, that outbound outreach. So
It's a tough one.
it's very tough. In fact, we're making the recommendation that I'm taking it that it was, the inference was, do we need to record that? I'm hearing from a couple of major carriers, nationwide carriers, that are saying record everything. That's simply
Yeah.
going to be the safest way to go about it. And, you know, with our strategic partner at Medicare Center, we're going to have that capacity to do that. So I asked myself, why don't we just be compliant? I treat compliance as if it was our friend. And again, we've got the tool, let's use it. So.
Yep.
Tim, thank you, buddy. Man, we really appreciate you taking the time, and bunch of great information there, guys. So we're here every day. Spin's right here. We know it's getting hectic and really heating up, but anything we can do to help, just give us a shout.
Always happy to help. Again, high seas raise all ships. And for everybody that's on this phone, you know, the fact that you guys are working with New Horizon, the fact that you guys are working with John and Steve, just the best in the business, I would just say, you know, lead on them for what you can. The good news is that you got the support of DEFT Research too, to provide some insights like this. And let's just have an awesome retention and an awesome acquisition AEP.
You're a great tool in the
Thank you,
toolbox,
buddy.
my friend.
Thank you,
Good
Tim.
job.
All right. Cheers,
Appreciate it.
everybody.
Thanks,
Have a great week.
everybody. Thank you.